Hey everyone, this is Nic LaRue, and you're watching Film Snobbery Live. Uh, if this is your first time here, we do this at the moment every Thursday. This is a live kind of talk show. We do a little bit of an interview type of thing. My name is Nic LaRue. I work in independent film, and I'm a film critic. I'm also an author, a screenwriter. As of next year, I'll be a director, so that'll be nice. For those of you who have never heard of Film Snobbery before, that's totally cool. Believe it or not, a lot of people haven't. You're not like in some weird cool kid club yet. We have been around for about 15 years. We do some cool stuff in the industry. We do script coverage. We do these live shows. We do a lot of coverage for film festivals and other kind of fun things. And we champion independent film and filmmakers, which leads me to the next part of this. We have a very special guest with us this episode. I'm really excited. I know I say I'm excited every episode, but this time I mean it. Um, we have a wonderful writer director on here. He is also the founder of the Gray List, which is I'll let him explain what that is, but it applies to people of my age, men and women and people of a certain age, as it were. And he's also just a fantastic person to chat with. And if you are lucky to run into him online, I highly recommend you do so. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Brad Johnson, how are you, sir?
Doing well, Nick. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for agreeing to come on.
Of course.
For those who have not been initiated into the cult of Brad Johnson yet, why don't you give them a little summary of who you are and kind of what's your deal?
What's my deal? So I'm a writer and filmmaker. I'm based out of the Pacific Northwest,
Hmm.
Washington State, and I've been excuse me, been writing for probably about 15 years now, as a screenwriter, and recently kind of started expanding my repertoire, or trying to hyphenate a bit, getting into producing and directing. Um, and Yeah, so that's me in a nutshell.
Well, that is fantastic. Tell everyone about the Gray List because I mean, when you announced this to me, there's so many. We were talking a little bit before the show. Like, there's a lot
Yeah.
of quote unquote lists out there in the world. They all kind of serve a different purpose. Ash Laser has the stunt list, and then there's obviously Franklin Leonard's the Black List, and then uh there's other ones as well. I know that I'm probably gonna just blank on all of them. What makes the Gray List? What is distinctive about it?
So really, the purpose of the Gray List is to help curate a group of original market ready screenplays, both feature and pilot, um, that are from writers over the age of 40. Essentially, we kind of have the tagline that creativity has no expiration date, and that's really what we believe. But unfortunately, it it is just an additional hurdle for writers to have to cross as they get older, if they haven't already broken in and haven't already established themselves by the time they get out of their 30s. And that's a lot of people are in that boat for a lot of different reasons. Um, and really, so it's just a chance for us to to shine a spotlight on the fact that there are some really great stories being told out there by wonderful writers who often aren't considered, for open assignments or for staffing in rooms, all kinds of different things. And just kind of trying to do our part to help bring a little bit of attention to the issue, and you know, help some writers get discovered.
Beautiful thing. Do you think that with the internet being what it is, and I know older people or people over a certain age, as technology, I know how it is for me. Technology has progressed since I was a young whippersnapper. And it's frustrating because I have a background in technology. I was a network engineer for many years, and it's frustrating because I now look at new stuff like let's take social media for instance. Let's look at
Yeah.
like TikTok. TikTok is frustrating as all hell for me. I look at people half my age and younger that manipulate that into almost like television level, you know, short form content and get millions of views and this and that. And I look at that and I'm like, I have a camera, I have a phone, I have these things, and okay, there's some graphics you can put on there, and I don't know how they're doing that at the rate they're doing it. Like, like it's like I can probably
Yeah, yeah.
figure out how of how they're doing it, but it's the constant like churn of quote unquote content and stuff like that that gets me. Do you think that, like I'm with technology kind of advancing the way it always kind of does, do you feel it kind of leaves, folks that are getting older a little bit in the dust, or do you think it provides newer opportunities for us to find like new niches to succeed in?
I think it's the latter actually. I think obviously there are some platforms like TikTok and whatever ends up coming after that, um, that it's always going to skew younger in terms of people that are young people that are looking for something cool that all the adults aren't on, as a way to express themselves. But I think ultimately, if you just look at Twitter, um, it's an avenue that didn't exist 15 years ago, 20 years ago, for writers to get out there and make connections, find a community, and really be able to be anywhere globally and still have a a reach where they can get an audience to the stories they're trying to tell, and learn from people who are already in the industry. All these kind of outlets that just didn't exist a while back, and I think the opportunities that creates. I mean, I think you can go online and see areas where it's resulting in successes every day that people wouldn't have had if it weren't for it. So I think it's a good thing ultimately.
Yeah, do you I kind of look at there being, with people having an online presence and things like that. It
Yeah.
really for folks over the age of 40 who may not have an opportunity, A, because of location, and B, because of their age. There's a slight bit of anonymity, and if you can kind of hit with something original or unique or grabbing, out of the gate, whether it's on social media or whether you submit to like a cover fly or the gray list or something like that. I feel like that slight bit of anonymity can kind of level the playing field a little bit. If they don't know specifically, it's like, oh, oh, she's a woman in in her 60s out in Wisconsin, but she just wrote a fantastic, thriller script, feature script or something like that. Yeah, I think that
Absolutely.
there's, it becomes less about who she is and more the fact that of just what kind of talent she can offer and provide. Um, do you, so have you, tell me a little, I'm going to pivot a little bit to some
Yeah.
of your own work. You have a short film that's out right now called Chat. Tell me
Yeah.
about a little bit about that because I know that that was also a little bit of a collaboration effort, as all film kind of is. But tell the audience maybe a little bit about that. And also, I want to remind the audience real quick that if you're watching us right now on filmsnobbery.com/live, hello, there's a chat room there. That is basically Twitch. That's what we're streaming to. So you can also find us twitch.com/filmsnobbery. Um, I highly recommend if you want to chat with our guests, ask questions of myself or our guest. Um, I think all you need to do is register with Twitch, which most people are anyway. But register with Twitch, and then you can ask your question in the chat room, and we're happy to answer those for you, and call you out online and all that kind of fun stuff. That's the collaborative part of this. That's what I really like about doing like live stuff. Now, back to my question for you because I'm talking a lot. Tell us a little bit about chat.
So chat's actually a great example of what we were just talking about. You know, I was looking for a way to kind of embrace get out there and make something uh, ethic. And because of Twitter, I had made made some friends just by being on there and being part of the community and engaging and talking to people. And that's how I came to meet and know a wonderful writer named Kim Hornsby. She had written the short script for chat, and we she shared it with me, and I responded to it, and told her that if she ever wanted to do something with it, I would love to be involved in some way. And over the course of several months, that evolved into me signing on to co-produce that short film with her, and step into the director's chair for the first time, and direct a short. And then from there, everything kind of branched out. We Both of our lead actors, Aaron Rea and Josh Price, also were both connections that were initially made off of Twitter. And the team just came together. It was a really wonderful experience. I think we got super lucky with the team we were able to put together on chat. And it kind of probably spoiled me for all my projects going forward, because it was such a good atmosphere, and just everyone bringing their A game. And we were lucky enough to have a really relatively smooth shoot. And then I worked with Luke Swanziger to do all of the post production work. The film wouldn't be what it was without the work that he did. He was kind of our entire post production suite of talent, and he knocked it out of the park again, like everybody else. And so we were able to earlier this year start taking it out to film festivals, and we're about halfway through our film festival run. We've shown at 4 different festivals, won a couple of awards, won a Best Actor and Best Actress award, won a People's Choice Award, which is really nice to see. I always like the audience awards, because it's just a sign of everyone really kind of digging what you're doing.
I hear that from a lot of
Um,
filmmakers that like I really would rather win like instead of like best picture blah blah blah, like
yeah,
they really want to win the audience award because then you really connected with somebody.
exactly. Yeah, it was a really nice moment when we won that. And that was at the Poulsbo Film Festival earlier this year in Poulsbo, Washington. Um, and then, like I said, we're on a little bit of a pause right now just because of the holidays, and then we've got probably the other half of the festivals we submitted to are making their decisions in Q1 of next year.
Yeah. For anyone who's not familiar with how the entertainment industry works, right about from November 15th till about like February, the industry ostensibly just kind of shuts down. Like, the your general like below the line crew and stuff like that is still like doing like pre-production, and they're still doing like a lot of they're getting things together. And this with the strikes this year, I know that they've done a lot of rush production to try to like fill in some stuff. But generally speaking, like this is the downtime for the industry because of all the holidays and stuff like that. And yeah, it's interesting. So you did you know how did you meet Kim? I mean, Kim Hornsby. Did you meet her from social media pretty much?
Yeah, we met on Twitter and just kind of connected as in terms of our personalities and what we were talking about and our approach to everything. And actually, I met her on Twitter before I moved to Washington State. And so once I had moved and found out, and she was local, then we had the opportunity to take it to another level, and actually, made collaboration in person a little easier.
That I had a long time film snobbery watch fan listener. I hesitate to call him a fan because he's my friend, but someone who used to watch our shows and support us a lot. And he was also a filmmaker. He's also an author, and he wrote a book on horror screenwriting. And it turns out when I moved at one point to Tennessee, he was like 2 towns over, and it was like one of those people like no, we both connected on a couple of different levels, but we'd always kept in touch and stuff. And so when I moved there, it was great. So I'm like, oh, I have my 2 a.m. buddy now. Like the one I'm like, okay, hey man, I'm just sitting around like doing nothing right now and I can't sleep. You want to go have like a coffee? So I always I love that. And we met online, so same thing. As a matter of fact, the gentleman that I the gentleman that is going to be the director of one of the short films I'm making next year, the one I wrote, a horror movie, I met him on Blue Sky. And it just so happened that he had a banner on his profile where the image of it that he made, because he's a VFX artist, and he does like, music videos and stuff like that. I was like, that image that you have there, I said, that's exactly the last shot of the movie that I just wrote. And he goes, is that's awesome. Is anyone directing it? Is it out? Can I see it anywhere? I said, haven't gotten around to, doing it yet, but I'm thinking about like it being one of the first couple of ones I'm doing. And so he said, I would love to read the script. And so I was like, sure. So I sent him the script. He goes, I want to do this. This is great. And so it might be because it was an easy read too. It's literally 3 pages long. And it's mostly silent. So, but it's in his wheelhouse. It's horror and it's VFX driven. So,
Yeah.
I think that, kind of made his brain go. Then we had a great pre-production meeting, and I was like, "Yeah, let's do this." And so we're slated. We're going to do a crowdfunding campaign in the beginning of next year, and then he's going to shoot it. He's in Paris, and so he's going to shoot it in Paris, and then right around the same time, I may be in the UK doing a comedy short that I also wrote that I'll probably direct, and but it's weird, yeah, like collaboration, especially meeting people online like that is really it's interesting. And with the way that social media was, we kind of talked about it a little bit right before the show, where I was just like, with all the websites and stuff now, like I feel like I have to triple my workload, and the reach on these things is really weird and funky. We actually have a question from the chat here that
Sure.
it's uh Larry Angel. I'll just say who it is. That's my wife Angelique. She's being a team player right now. She said, speaking of Twitter/X, which I call Twix, Brad, what are your thoughts on the current state of things on the platform, and where are people moving to, if anywhere?
It's the current state of things is this is all personal opinion, obviously, but it's just really unfortunate. I think since the new ownership took over, there have been huge changes to the algorithm and how things are elevated or depressed in terms of showing up in your feed, and it's just made it significantly more difficult to get the kind of reach that you used to be able to get just organically by engaging with the community. It's almost kind of necessitated following people and making lists within the system to make sure that you're seeing the posts by the people you care about. And even then, I now miss like quite a bit where I'll see something that got posted 4 or 5 days ago, and I just don't see it until it happens to pop up for some other reason. Um, in terms of where people are going, there's obviously been a couple of hot sites that have come up over the course of the last year or two.
Yeah,
I think from what I've seen, the most consistent place has been Blue Sky.
yeah,
I think there were a few other sites that almost made it and just weren't ready for the
yeah.
for the for the for
Not
the
quite there for prime time. And I also think that like they were so heavily, I don't want to say agended, but like they were very much in answer to some of the more partisan aspects of what Twitter's become. And
yeah.
so like they were very like completely the other direction, which I think turns some people off. And it's a weird to want to get this mix of audience share. Like Spottable, Counter Social, all those kind of things are very much more, let's say, left leaning. And it's like, okay, but then are you going to alienate other people who, yeah, might be more center or right, but they may still respond to your work? And if that's the case, could that spark a conversation that ultimately leads to some level of connection, outside of politics, morality to some degree, I guess. But I feel like that's where the art form of whether it's music, film, etc. I feel like that's what it's meant to do, is to start those conversations with people who may have that differing opinion, or may just, or may even better, have a similar aesthetic, but it's just not a person you would think to talk to about that,
Yeah,
and make
yeah.
a connection with. Um, yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's a weird kind of Wild West landscape out there with a lot of this stuff, and yeah, and now it does seem like it used to be content is king, and now it's more like pay to play to some degree.
Yeah, it's essentially, I think, trying to butter their bread on both sides in terms of getting money from advertisers for the content being produced by the users, but then also asking the users to pay to elevate the content they're putting in,
Yeah,
which
yeah, which is weird. It's a real double dip kind of
yeah,
situation.
yeah,
Yeah, going back to screenwriting for a half a minute.
sure.
I'd be really interested in knowing from your perspective, where is the frustration for you, if any, in screenwriting? Is it in the writing and the finishing of an idea, or is it in the what do I do with this now? Trying to find representation, trying to find a potential collaboration partner, whether it's a director or an investor or to break it into a studio thing, a contest or whatever. Like where for you is the thing that you sit there and say, I'm beating my head up against the wall on this a little bit.
Um, it's kind of, I guess it's kind of twofold. From a very like day in, day out perspective, it always boils down to time.
Yeah.
I've got a day job. I've got two kids, and finding time to you know squeeze like consistently, which is the key, right?
Yep.
To consistently squeeze in time to continue with building momentum with what you're writing and the various projects that you're working on is always the challenge. But if it's something that you're passionate about and you want to do, then you find a time. But there's obviously not as many hours in the day ever as as you would like.
Yeah.
Um,
You're always about 2 hours short.
yeah, yeah.
Always like, yeah.
From a larger perspective, I think it like the most, I don't even know, frustrating, but like the certainly the biggest hurdle to try to clear is what to do with the work after you're done with it, how to get it noticed. It's kind of another one of those things of, yes, you can submit it to contests. That costs a lot of money, and some of them are worth it, some of them are not. And it can also be relatively random luck of the draw in terms of who your first round reader is. Um, Same thing with film festivals. If you have a short film or a feature that you're taking out to film festivals, a lot of it just kind of it's even more expensive at that level to start to submitting to all the film festivals that are out there. So you have to be really targeted, really strategic, really, careful with your money and where you're spending it because it's not an unlimited resource, obviously.
Yeah.
And, you know, just trying to, it's a numbers game. Like it's really all it is. But it's trying to get the attention on your work, but really it's more than that. It's because it's not just attention that you need, right? Like we can go on Twitter and get tons of attention for a well-written script from a bunch of other writers that are out there that love our work.
Yeah.
So it
And is
has to
that
be,
valuable? Like, I know that there's an affirmation aspect to it, right? Like,
yeah,
obviously it's like, as writing is a solitary experience that is then when shared becomes this audience participatory kind of thing, whether it's prose, whether it's script, poetry,
yeah.
whatever, or it becomes made into a film or a play or something like that. But the thing of that is the like, is there anything beyond just the aspect of like, hey, I'm writing too, good job, we're both doing it, look at us both doing the thing, like, is that really pushing anyone forward though? While it's appreciated, right? Like it's like that affirmation is appreciated. It does kind of go, keep you moving forward. And there's a little bit of a competitive aspect to it as well of like they're doing it. I can do that too. But is it really pushing anyone forward? Is it the contests or the fellowships or the whatever? Is that the way forward? Is it just eliminate those things altogether and focus on finding representation? Like, or or trying to set up meetings or just saying, screw it, I'm just going to make these myself, or I'll find a collaborator to make these myself. Like, in your opinion, is like, what is your kind of approach on that? Are you more of a like, I'm going to, I'll just let you answer that. What is your opinion on that?
I mean, I think there's value in everything, and ultimately it boils down to what you're trying to accomplish, with and what kind of career you want to try to build for yourself. If I know people whose goal is really not to work in Hollywood, but to work as an independent filmmaker. And so, what they're looking to get out of social media and their interaction with other people is going to be significantly different than someone that wants to break in as a screenwriter within Hollywood, working on jobs for major studios. Um,
What do you want to do? Do you eventually, like, if they say tomorrow, like, hey, Brad Johnson, we saw Chat somehow, or we read, your vampire Western script or something like that. Like, we love this. We want you to write the next Blade movie, or we want you to write the next, Marvel or Hunger Games, or we want you to like adapt something or whatever. Do you look at that and go like, "Yup," or do you immediately go like, "I don't know, like that's not really mine now. Like that's part of something else." And so I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. Like where's your line as far as that goes?
um, I'm not. I'm certainly not one to shut any doors that might have a paycheck on the other side of it. Um, I'll just say that. I think, you know, the key to any of that stuff is finding your own way into the story and finding your own way to tell that story in a way that's going to be engaging and rewarding for you as a writer, and being willing to say no to the opportunities where you can't do that,
Right.
right? And if you're willing to do that and you have some self-awareness in terms of that, I think you can really do both. I think if the doors to Hollywood were thrown open tomorrow for me and I just sauntered in, I would have no problem. I mean, of course, like I have original stories that I would love to tell,
Right.
and that's always probably going to be primary. But I have absolutely no problem, you know, taking a piece of existing IP or taking a franchise with the next installment and looking for unique ways to tell stories within that world. It's really about, can I find something that I actually want to say within that world? Because I think outside of screenwriting, I learned the lesson a long time ago to never make a decision based solely on money, right? It's only going to lead to you being miserable,
Yeah.
because it's ultimately never worth it in the end. And I think that holds true in this case as well.
Yeah, and you brought something up, and that's real where this really to me is the rub, right? Where um a lot of people have formed their entire identity around being independent. I'm an independent filmmaker. I'm an independent this, independent that,
Yeah.
screenwriter. I like to do things for me, whatever. And then it's like, but if you get the opportunity to go into a writer's room or to get that big Marvel paycheck of like, okay, it's now you're working on something that is existing IP or existing, whatever. Now you're sacrificing your voice in your art in that independent way. For it's like now you have to collaborate with other people. Now you have to do things in a way where like there's already kind of a structure for this, and the creative aspect of it is kind of limiting because it's going to go through notes and it's going to go through, it has to fit into other things that may come down the road, of that. That I feel like there's a real trade-off, and there's an honest conversation I think a lot of writers, screenwriters have to have with themselves of, what do I want? And do I want to be in that writer? Like, it sounds great, right? To get the big Marvel check, to be in a
Yeah.
writer's room on a syndicated show that goes for 10 seasons or whatever, 7 seasons in a movie, so to speak, or something like that. But the conversation really has to be like, is that what I want? And is that money going to be worth it to me, or am I going to feel creatively bereft at the end of that, you know,
Yeah.
because once you enter into that hustle too, like that's a you're once you're in, you want the goal is to stay in, and you have to be somewhat prolific, and you have to be
Oh,
good to work with and dependable and reliable and all these kind of things. So as opposed to being more independent, where it's like you kind of work at your own pace and all that. Do you kind of see, some
yeah.
agreements there on that?
Yeah, I mean, I've spent the and part of like we all come to all of these things with our own lens that we're viewing it through, right? And I've spent the last 15 years working in corporate America, and you know, in specifically in the marketing sector, and that's I mean that's what my day job is.
Yeah.
And so I do have a lot of experience working on projects that aren't originated by me, that have a lot of stakeholders who are all going to have an opinion.
Hmm.
And you have to find a way to still be creative and be passionate while finding a solution that's going to address as many of the concerns as possible and ultimately make everyone that's paying your salary happy.
Yeah.
And so you know, I have a ton of experience doing that. So the thought of doing that in a different industry uh, isn't as daunting to me as it might be. Like I know that I can find a way to do so, but I think it also does connect into the power of saying no and being willing to say no uh, when that fit just isn't there.
Yeah.
Like you always kind of know in your gut there, when you're getting ready to say yes to something and it's not the best fit, but you're getting ready to say yes because
Yeah.
the money's right or whatever situation. And like being at a place where you can recognize that and being willing to say, I'm not the right person for this. I think ultimately not only will you benefit in the long run, but the people that you're saying it to, if they're the right people, are going to respect that.
Yeah.
And rather than burning a bridge, it will actually give them more confidence in you the next time when you say, this is the job that I'm right for.
Yeah. I had a conversation with a documentary filmmaker, Malcolm Ingram, for my book. It comes out next year. And he goes into that a little bit. We're talking about distribution and some of his
Yeah.
movies and stuff like that, and how he's had to turn down opportunities because they're just not the right opportunities. Like he wasn't confident that things were going to be treated properly, or they were going to come out the way that they were being presented, or the money wasn't right, or whatever. And so, that ability to you can say no. There are consequences, obviously, and you have to be
Yeah.
prepared for those things. But you like no is not a four-letter word, so to speak. It's it can be a real powerful tool to kind of make sure that you level set with yourself on those things, and get the eventual outcome that you're going for.
Absolutely.
What as someone who has the day job, as someone who has the kids and all those the civilian life on top of this creative life, at what point in your existence did you say, I want to work in the entertainment industry and I'm going to start doing this? Like I feel like to some degree it's kind of like maybe we're born with it, maybe it's Maybelline, I don't know. But I feel like to some degree, like there's for lack of a better term, come to Jesus moment where some of us will go like, yeah, this is kind of my calling, this is what I feel like I want to do. Some of it happens a lot earlier, like where we can still have the choice to go to school for it, or we could still have, you know what I mean, like there's to start that career path earlier. Some with some it's much later. Where did you get the bug for it?
I mean, I've had the bug for movies for a long time. Um, the first movie that I was taken to see, and looking back, I was probably too young to be taken to see it, but it was a different time. Was Raiders of the Lost Ark,
Yeah.
and I saw it in the theater. Um, I fell in love with that movie and movies in general, and I've been a sucker for film ever since. It probably wasn't until the mid, I think this probably is true of a lot of people our age, probably the mid 90s, when I kind of realized that there were people whose job it was to write screenplays, and that it was actually a thing that people did in a potential career. And that's with, with Tarantino and Rodriguez coming out. And like one of the first books I ever bought was three screenplays by Edward Burns. And reading those and seeing the format and like starting to understand how the way that it's written on the page was then translated into the visual images that I was seeing, took it to a whole other realm of like, maybe this is a thing I could do. um, then life happens, and you end up losing more time than you originally anticipated. So I would say the drive to one degree or another has been there as a thing I wanted to do since the mid to late 90s. Um, it's probably been about 4 or 5 years since I've been in a place, time wise, financially, personally, just in general, to really be able to significantly devote myself to getting better and improving the craft and trying to build a career.
Do you think that there is something to like obviously there are tools out there that can help screenwriters and
Yeah,
writers in general. There's Final Draft is considered an industry standard, although I know that Fade In is making a
I'm a
real.
fade in user myself.
I'm both, and also I use Scrivener. Celtics was a free option that was like really popular back in the day.
Yeah.
I don't know really kind of where it stands now, but there's a lot of options, and of course just plain old Word. And there's just as many options as there are for screenwriting software, there's just as many opinions about how your script should be formatted and how those things should be used. Rather than get
We're
into
gonna get into
that, yeah, I was
that.
going to say, rather than get into that argument, the question about that I would probably ask though is, do you focus more or less on just getting the story out that you want to tell versus worrying about what format it is in? I realize that my stories are probably not in a quote unquote industry standard format. I also do not give a shit. And I mean, in as much as like Final Draft or Fade In or whatever will format my stuff of like, oh, action lines, dialogue,
Yeah,
parentheticals, blah blah blah, right? But do I use parentheticals the way that most industry standard people do? No, I use them as almost substitute action lines. You know what I mean? Like where I really want to make sure that they understand that I want the actor to gesticulate to something within the scene. Like I'm giving you a very specific direction. I've had people review my stuff or read my stuff and go, "Don't do that," and I'm like, "No, I'm going to continue doing that." It's because I know the story I'm trying to tell. I know that the what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give a visual and a feeling. And if I have to describe that a certain way to elicit that, and maybe there are more efficient ways, but if I have to do that a certain way to elicit that, that's the way I'm going to do it. But I also come from a more of a background of like screenwriting was a thing I got into because because I was already doing this, right?
yeah, yeah.
So it's a natural extension, but I'm a prose writer ultimately. I've written several books, and I have, like I said, one coming out next year, although that's more academic in nature. But I write more like long form fiction, and where format is kind of just not a care. Do you focus more on tell how you are telling your story or the story that you're telling versus how it looks on the page? Or is there a real combination of like in the rewrites maybe where you go like, there's a way I can tighten this up or blah blah blah.
I I mean, it's a combination of both, really. I mean, ultimately, the most important thing um, is to have a good story, right?
Hmm.
But at the same time, you need to tell that story in the most compelling and efficient way possible.
Hmm.
And that's really where the formatting comes in. Are there there aren't hard and fast rules to screenwriting, but there are basic guidelines because of what people that work in the industry expect to see when they open a script. Now you can subvert that, you can alter that, but you have to understand those expectations first before you start altering them and
Do
not
you
just
think that those
ignore them and be okay.
expectations are set in a way that is a little more hyperbolic than what they actually are? I think that anyone who understands how movies and television get made understand that before it gets to your screen, that thing is rewritten probably 10 times, right? That initial draft is probably rewritten or given notes on a
Yeah.
number of times before it
Yeah.
sees an audience's eyeballs. So if we're talking from a reader perspective, like I send my script in or my agent sends a script in to
Mhm.
somewhere and a reader is going to read it, as opposed to it going directly to producers or something like that, like, obviously like a higher end person like a Scorsese or something like that who's a director and or Soderbergh or people who are writer directors or people who are whatever those scripts. It's weird, you see those higher end scripts and then we see this every year and they'll post some of them and they're like, that doesn't look like anything that is actually formatted the way that we are told in the trenches to do it. Is it more of a, you have to know the rules to break them, or just some things don't apply to some people?
I think it's about knowing where you are in your career and where you are in the industry. Um, if I'm this isn't a good example, but if because he wouldn't do this, he directs his own stuff. But if Quentin Tarantino wrote a screenplay that he was going to send out to the studios for someone else to direct,
Technically True Romance.
he
So
yes.
it is a good,
So
it's a good
but in
example.
this case, if
You're
he was
good.
doing it
I'm just
now, like
validating your statement.
he he can write that script however he wants because people are going to get in their inbox and say, "Oh, I've got the new Quentin Tarantino script.
Mhm.
I'm going to read it." Right? But if you're a newcomer that's trying to break in and you don't already have that that foothold and you're trying to get your script is going into the process at a lower rung of the ladder.
Right.
And the people that are on those lower rungs, they can be talented, they can know what they're doing. You would hope they would if they're an assistant for an executive or something like that.
Mhm.
But they're also relatively low paid and they're getting stacks of 40 screenplays to take home and evaluate over the weekend. So they're looking for any excuse not to say this is a sign that this writer doesn't know what they're doing, the script isn't going to be good, so that they can toss it aside and move on to the next one. In the same way, in the same for the same reason that it's so important to grab the reader story wise within that first 1 to 3 pages because you want to get them to keep flipping, is the same reason to like have your script looking like what a professional script looks like so that they're not opening the page seeing something that looks completely off and just being like, okay, this person doesn't know what they're doing, toss it. It's the same thing with page counts, right? Like, yeah, if I'm Scorsese, I can turn in a 180 page, or Sorkin or somebody like that, I can turn in a 180 page screenplay.
Yeah.
But I was just reading a post from someone that I follow on LinkedIn. uh
That no one it does below 90 anymore, or not,
Yeah.
like there's no
Well,
90.
it
Yeah.
was it was an executive that literally said like I had two scripts come into my inbox. One was 138 pages, one was 92 pages. Guess which one I'm reading tonight?
I had a comment from
Yeah.
someone who read something I wrote recently, which was a pilot, and it was specifically a 1 hour pilot comedy. Um, so it was I think 40 or 42 pages or something like that. Very
Yeah.
specifically because I how the commercial breaks and all that kind of stuff lay out. And he was like, "Oh, it's too short." No, it isn't. But okay. I don't know. Yeah, I agree with that though. I think that movie going, and maybe this is a combination of factors of like, um, it costs more to go to movies now, so they're trying to make you stay there longer as a way to make up for that, like to some degree. Maybe it's just screw you. This is the story I want to tell, and it's going to be here. You're going to be here for 4 hours. Like that's just, I don't know. I mean, here's the thing, because no one blinks an eye at going to a Broadway play where it's a 3 or 4 hour experience. There's an intermission, which is a completely different conversation, but like no one blinks an eye at that level of entertainment because that is done. Even in the UK, and there's a couple comedians here in the US. There's a lot of comedy shows that are 90 minutes as opposed to like what we consider to be like either a half an hour or an hour
Yeah.
special. So I think there's definitely precedent for those things, but you're right. Like, not every script should be a 2.5 hour long slog. It's, how long does it really take you to tell your story? And I think you hit the nail on the head a little bit with some other things you've said in the interview here, which is like being honest with yourself about this, not only in your goals and your motivations, but also like, what is the story that you're actually trying to tell here? And is there merit to being judicious in the amount of time of other people's time that you're going to take with that story?
Yeah, and on the smaller formatting stuff like bolding slug lines and stuff like that.
Bolded Slugs, you mean the new podcast hosted over on filmsnobbery.com?
That's right.
Hosted by
Plug.
Zeus Ryan?
But like, that kind of stuff, like I don't think anyone is getting a script bought or passed on because of the decisions they make in that regard.
Yeah,
To me, the key on that is just like pick a thing that works for you and then be consistent in it. Like, don't bold your slug lines for the first 30 pages and then not bold your slug lines
right.
for the last 60. That will make you stand out as like not being a professional and knowing what you're doing. But
What do you,
other than that, it doesn't really matter.
what is so far in your career been specific? Well, actually, you know what? I'm not going to limit it to just your entertainment industry career. Let's put it all the way across the spectrum of your life. What is the number one best piece of advice you've been given, like business advice you've been given that you've been like, every time I've taken that advice, it has worked?
Um, I wish I had a more exciting answer, but I've already kind of said what my answer to this is, which is to not make decisions based on money as the sole motivating factor or the sole decision making. I definitely did not follow that advice when I was younger,
Yeah,
and it led to some really miserable years, some really miserable jobs that I stayed in way too long because I didn't think I could afford to make less. And really, what you're doing at that point is you're assigning a monetary value to like your emotional and mental well-being.
yeah,
And as I've gotten older and I've internalized that advice more, it's just become more and more evident that it's true. And I would rather make half of what I'm making now and be happy than make twice what I'm making now and be miserable on a daily basis. It's just not.
yeah.
And I think that can apply to regular life, and then like we discussed, it can apply to a screenwriting career. It can apply to anything you're doing. Just be passionate about what you're doing and say yes and no to the opportunities that come up to you for the right reasons.
Absolutely. Um, so are you a person who has kind of like, this is the one thing I'm working on or I finished, and now I'm going to kind of take it out to market, whether it's to, friends or, whatever that are in the industry that, hey, are you interested in making this? Or do you know anyone who might be interested in this, or taking it to contests or fellowships or whatever? Or do you have a tendency to go like, okay, I finished something. I'm going to put that over here in my little war chest. And then when that person who does come around and says, well, what do you have? And then you give them something and you go, then they say, okay, well, what else do you have? You have like this trove, this treasure trove, your hoard, stash of scripts ready to go? Do you always kind of have like a little mountain of stuff that is there, and then there's like the thing, or is it more of a one to one? Like you finish something and it's like, okay, now this is the thing for the next year that I'm going to take out to market and kind of see what I can do with it.
Yeah, and my personal opinion is that you can't build a career that way. That you have to constantly have multiple projects going and multiple pieces that you're doing in different phases. So I've got a script that I'm actively trying to shop and get producers attached to because it's ready to go in production if I can find the right partner for it.
Mhm.
At the same time, there are going to be people that I send it to that it's not the right fit for, but they may like the writing style and say and give that coveted what else what else do you have? So like right now I've got that finished script. I've got another script that I'm in the process of rewriting. I've got another project that I'm in the process of doing a first draft on. I've got two other projects that I'm in the process of outlining and developing to the point of starting to write so that there's always, and that's just on the writing side. There's also promoting chat out there through the film festival circuit while also starting pre-production on the next short that I'm going to be filming next year. And yes, with one of the with Josh Price, one of the actors from chat,
Oh,
he's got a
cool.
script that he wrote, and we're going to be bringing that to people next year. Um, but you never know what's going to resonate with people or when it's going to resonate with or who's going to get exposed to it. So I certainly I certainly would not advise anyone to write one script and then spend a year just trying to get that one script done without doing anything else. At the same time, I wouldn't recommend that someone write a script and then put it aside and not promote it at all while they just go into writing the next thing. You kind of you have to get yourself to a point of being able to write and sell at
Yeah,
the at the same
I mean,
time.
at the very least, what I'll do if I finish something is I'll put it up on like Coverfly or something so that if
Yeah.
I find an opportunity
Yeah,
for
you have an
even
easy
if I
link
can't
you can
focus
share.
on, yeah,
Yeah.
even if I can't focus on it specifically at the time, like at least if there's an opportunity that comes up, I can direct it to somebody, like very easily, just be like, here's a link, check it out. Or,
Yeah.
occasionally even just pimp out, just like, oh, here's my profile link. Um, if you see something you like, contact me type of deal. Is there any particular genre that you tend to gravitate towards more than any other when you're writing?
There's really not. I've got, my Word document of ideas for scripts, and they do kind of run the gamut from straight dramas to crazy sci-fi action stuff. Most of what I will say though that most of what I tend to get most excited about idea wise does fall within the genre world. So horror, sci-fi, you know, action, thrillers, that kind of stuff. I've got a couple of ideas for things that would be probably categorized as straight dramas, but that's the minority in terms of what I do.
Do you ever write in regards to like an idea of budget? Like, do you ever go like, oh, let's say you want to do a sci-fi script or a horror script. You're writing the story out and you go like, oh, I can't have that set piece. That's going to cost someone a bucket of money. Or do you just say, you know what, that's someone else's problem. Like I'm at the moment, I'm going to tell this story the way I want to tell it, and we can figure the rest of it out later.
I do write with budget in mind, because I haven't broken into the industry yet. I'm not a repped writer, and so it the easier you can make it for someone to say yes, the better, right? And so if you're an unproven, quote unquote, unproven writer that hasn't had something produced before, it's going to be much easier for someone to take a chance on you and say yes for a script that can be done for $5 million, $10 million than one that would be $150 million to do. Now, like that being said, if you have a fantastic friggin' idea that you're passionate about, uh, and it would cost $200 million to make, you know, write it. Maybe it blows people out of the water, and you're the exception that proves the rule. You never know. But I'm always very aware of what the budget would be for the story that I'm trying to tell.
I just finished a sci-fi feature, and you know, I've had a couple people like, "Oh, well, what kind of budget range is it?" I'm like, theoretically, you could do it for half a million, a million, or you could do it for 200 million. Like it really all depends. It's sci-fi, so how much do you want to really put into it? You could do it really, really cheaply, or you could do it, on a big budget scale. I think it all depends on what your expectation. Also, I think, depending on what you're focusing on too, right? Like if you're focusing on special effects, well, that
Yeah,
costs money. If you're focusing on characters, you can work around some of those other aspects.
absolutely.
Yeah, I, I one th we talked a little bit about, I know we're kind of like getting towards the end, but I'm still, I could talk to you forever. So Brad and I have, for those of you out there who are either just joining us or have been following along, Brad and I actually were in a writers group together, and one of the things we did during that writers group with a lot of the other people that were there was we broke story and we gave notes. We did we did kind of table reads, which was fun because we all got to explore our accents or lack thereof. That was good time. Do you what? Obviously, we already talked about like you're very open to collaborating with people. We working with Kim, and obviously you were in the group with myself. What do you tend to get out of those writers group? Do you feel like you get something out of those? Is there something you get by hearing your stuff read out? Is there something you get by getting that feedback, or trying to get other people's opinions on where your story is going?
I think there's a ton of value in terms of getting feedback on your writing from your peers. It's you have to, just like anything though, you have to get it to the right audience. Like you don't send your sci-fi spec script to a group that like where everyone hates Star Wars and like has no interest in sci-fi. They're not going to give you the kind of notes that you want.
I
Um,
find comedy is that thing that I have the hardest time getting feedback for.
yeah.
In turn,
Well,
because
it's
everyone
such a
wants to.
subjective thing, like what's
Yeah.
funny and what's not. It can be really hard to
And,
to then you have to like know the sense of humor of the people you're sending it to.
And I find that most people want to dramatize what you've said, and I'm like, no, 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 this is not about motivations. This is not about that. It's situational. That's why it's called the situation comedy, or so it's a sketch, or it's a day in the life kind of thing, slice of life. Like people want to know, like, well, how did they get like this? And I'm like, no, that's irrelevant to the situation that they're in. You have to accept the characters as they're presented in this particular situation, because you have here to here, and that is it. They don't exist outside of that box. So between, it's like we give you just enough to enter into what their lifestyle is or what they're doing, and then whatever. I just find that you're right. Like absolutely, like it's situational. In as much as like you don't know who you're gonna get in terms of the line of their tastes, or their sense of humor. Maybe some people like absurdist humor more than they like just
Yeah,
slapstick or something like that. But I find it to be a very difficult thing. It's also something I don't find as much on the festival circuit. I find that comedies, especially features, don't exist. You might get them in the shorts block, definitely like pilots and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but I feel like I don't see them very often in represented as boldly as they do on, oddly enough, on television, or on the streaming services and stuff like that. I find far more comedy there than I do on the indie side. Is
Comedy's
uh,
hard.
yeah, I find that to be really, really interesting and kind of funny. It's because I love film festivals. I love going to film festivals, but I
Yeah.
also don't want to sit through like 30 very dark, dramatic movies about trauma and all these other things. And I'm not saying that they don't have something to say. It's wonderful, and horror is great and all that, but like sometimes I just want to go and like laugh. And I find that that is lacking. I mean, you're on the festival circuit now. Do you find it weird to be on that side of it? Like now that this is not like sitting behind the keyboard and submitting to like a contest or something like that. You have to physically at times go places to like kind of represent. Like, is how is it to be on that other side?
I mean, it's exciting because the work is getting recognized, and the team that put in so much effort to make it are getting recognized. Anytime that it's selected for a festival or anytime it wins an award, it's like the award goes to whoever the award goes to, whether it's the film or an actor or the director or the writer. But it's such a collaborative process that really it's an award for everybody. And it's just always good to know that everyone's hard work is being recognized, and get to like raise that flag a little bit for them. But it's I'm not a naturally outgoing, uh, extroverted person. So going to these festivals and being asked to go up to the front of the theater afterwards for a Q&A after the block shows or whatever, is always a little bit terrifying for me. But
You got to get
it's
used to it because
it's
when you
something
go
you
up
have
to
to
that
get used to
stage to
doing.
accept the Oscar later for best screenplay,
That's right.
I'm sorry, you're gonna you
I'm gonna
know
have to give a
I
speech.
think there's even more pressure there. Don't fall, don't fart. That's it. That's
There
the
you
the
go.
two things you really got to remember. Try if you're gonna throw up, just don't do it on the audience. Try to just do it on the host. And I
There you
say
go.
that as the host. Um, well, look, you've been wonderful. Thank you for kind of joining me on this, and I do appreciate it. I would love to give you some time to promote anything that you've got to do right now, like your social media, websites, any particular scripts, appearances, where chat might be next, anything like that. Now's your time, sir.
Sure. Well, I mean, anyone that's interested in following me on Twitter can find me at RWW Film. Um, and from there, I can connect you to me on other platforms. But that's the best place to find me. Um, Chat is out there on the festivals right now. Like I said, we're in kind of a lull right now where we're waiting for the next batch of where we may be accepted. But you can you can visit my website, which is bradmjohnson.com, and there's a page on there for chat where you can stay updated on festivals that it's accepted to and where you might be able to see it and how you might be able to see it. And if there are any producers or anyone out there watching, I have a, a horror western called Blood Moon that that is the script I'm currently trying to find a producer for and get it out there. It's a really exciting piece that I love about a bounty hunter and a young priest that have to team up and work together to save a frontier town that's being assaulted by a gang of vampires. So it's got cowboys and vampires and lots of blood and lots of action, and got an 8 on the blood on the blacklist from that service, and would love to get it to a good home.
Fantastic. And then, of course, there's the gray list.
And then there's the gray list, which right now we're in the second half of the open submission window,
Mhm.
um, where you can nominate yourself, you can nominate others. It's format and genre agnostic. The only requirement is that the writer be 40 years old or older, and that submission window is good until the end of the year, 11:59 p.m. on December 31st. So get your nominations in there. You can also find a page for that and a link to the submission form on my website.
Fantastic. Well, Mr. Brad Johnson, thank you very much for coming on the show, and I appreciate. Thank you for everyone in the chat room and everyone who's watching over on Twitch. I actually do see a good a good list of you folks out there. I want to say thank you for joining us, and if you folks are out there looking for more Film Snobbery Live, we have an archive of shows going back years over on filmsnobbery.com. You can find myself on Twitter, Twix, whatever we're going to call it, right? Over at Film Snobbery. We're at Film Snobbery or thereabouts on most platforms. When in doubt, ask. And definitely join us every Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which I believe is 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Yep.
Hooray. And every Thursday for more live shows like this, and hopefully as we do more of these, we'll get more people. But thank you for the folks that did show up, and also we'll be giving a announcement on who the guest is for next week shortly, and the archive of this should be available on filmsnobbery.com probably tomorrow-ish. It's a weird thing. Tomorrow's my mom's birthday, so that day's already weird. Also, though, check out new episodes of Bolded Slugs coming out on Fridays as well. That's the podcast about screenwriting that is hosted by Zeus Ryan. And we have 2 episodes that are up. That's brand new. So there's 2 episodes that are up. Currently, there's episode 3 comes out tomorrow, and then every Friday thereafter. So check that out. Subscribe to it on all your favorite pod-catcher software thingies. And then yeah, follow us on all the things, and we'll see you next week. Thank you very much, sir, and I'll see you back online.
All right. Thanks
All
so much,
right.
Nick. Bye.
Bye.